I want to talk about the JVC 170U and why I sold it. Hit it. Hey, I'm Mike Turner, your friendly filmmaker, and I want to tell you the reasons why I sold the JVC 170U. Now, you can see that I have some videos that I did on that particular camera where I showed you some of the images that it could create. I also showed you the menus. I gave you my opinions of the camera. And I think overall I told you it was a pretty decent camera. And it is. I wasn't lying about that. It's decent if you're using it for in the proper environments. Okay, so we're going to get into why I sold it. But first, I just want to go through some minor issues that I had with the camera that weren't necessarily deal breakers, but they still kind of sucked anyway. Number one, I would say the audio controls on the audio handle. The little knobs are just too small. It's almost impossible to put the volume up or down without accidentally going too high or too low. Whatever. The other thing is, it's hard to blur a background because the sensor in that camera is really not that big. I think it's 2/3 of an inch. So blurring a background is a little tricky. It's not impossible. You can zoom into things and you can still blur, you know, so long as there's enough distance between your camera, what you're focusing on, and the background behind it, you can make it happen. So it's not impossible. And now the other thing also is the image stabilization. Oh, just caught a mosquito. Anyway, the image stabilization in the camera, it was decent, but not really all that great. So if you want to handhold the camera, yeah, it can help you out a little bit, but not really. It was more for like when you had your camera on like an unsteady monopod or something, it could balance that out a little bit. That's about it. Nothing major, right? Well, here's the major reason that I sold the camera. For me, I shoot a lot of weddings. When you shoot a lot of weddings, you're in environments that are pretty dim lit, you know, especially when you're shooting receptions. A lot of times, a lot of those environments there's just not a lot of light. And that camera, because of that small image sensor, didn't really handle those situations very well. So for me, that's why I sold mine. If not for that, I would have kept it. You know, I don't mind having a fixed lens camera. Then I don't need to bring a bunch of lenses with me. Saves me room in my backpack or whatever I'm carrying. It makes my life easier. So the fact that it was fixed lens didn't really bother me. But I did decide to get the JVC LS300 instead of the 170U, and I've been happy with that camera. I have to change lenses out, but of course that gives you more creative freedom, so that's not necessarily a bad thing. And it has a way bigger sensor, so it does a little bit better in low light. Now, it does do better in low light, but the fact that it has a Super 35 sensor in it, I would think that it would do way better in low light, and it doesn't. I find that the picture gets noisy after 1600 ISO with the LS300, and I think in that camera it should probably get up to about 6400 before you get some noise, but that doesn't work. Whatever. I just find that JVC doesn't do a very good job at handling low light conditions with their sensors. They're not good at processing the light information coming into the camera. If you look at one of my older videos, I have an example of the low light performance from the JVC 170U, the 70D, the Canon 70D, and the Sony CX900. Now the Sony CX900 only has a 1-inch sensor in it, which is a little bit bigger than the one that comes in the JVC 170U, but the low light performance is exponentially better than the JVC 170U. And also the Canon 70D, that has an APS-C sensor in it, which is bigger than 1 inch and obviously bigger than the JVC 170U. And honestly, I felt like the Sony did better than the 70D, believe it or not, with the smaller sensor. So sometimes the sensor size is not the only thing that's going to determine your low light performance. Sometimes it's just the way that the manufacturers process that low light information in their cameras. Some just do a better job at reducing noise. And obviously JVC just doesn't have a handle on that yet. Doesn't mean that they're making bad cameras. It just means that if you're looking for a low light camera because you do a lot of low light shooting, the JVC 170U is probably not what you're going to want to use. Now, if you're the type of person who, when you shoot weddings, you set up a bunch of lights and you blast the dance floor, you blast the reception area with lights, then you might be fine. Me, I set up lights. I don't make them too overpowered because I don't want the dance floor to be like the surface of the sun. But that's just me. Some people, you know, that's not how they roll. They just blast light. So if you want to blast light, then maybe you'll be all right. But anyway, that's it. That's why I sold that camera. Now you know. Also, if you want to check it out, there was another review on the 170U that was pretty good by Johnny Nerdout. I'll put a little link in the description to his channel and to his video so you can get some additional information about the 170U. And that might help you make a decision if you were thinking about buying that camera. Thanks for watching. I guess I'll see you soon.